Okay, so here's H-19. So you are given two functions that are inverses of each other. Use the inverse derivative formula to write the derivative of the indicated function. Now so up here, I'm going to say what the inverse derivative formula is in a minute. So first, we're going to do it without using the formula, and then I'll show you with the formula. The only thing about the formula is that you have to memorize it, which probably won't be that hard. But so here, you are given that y is equal to g inverse, and they want you to express y prime of x using the inverse derivative formula. Now, guys, if we want y prime of x, then that means that y, when we do our initial composition, like we did in part A, of the last phase, when we do our initial composition, should y be the inside or the outside function? Well, let's look. Okay, so here we were able in the end to solve for w prime. And where was it in part A? It was the inside function. Because when you do the derivative of the inside function, that's what allows it to come out front, and then you just divide by the rest. Okay, same here. When we solved for the derivative of f prime, we were able to do that because f was the inside function. So if we want the derivative of y prime, then the composition that you do should be g of y of x equals x. Now, worst case scenario, you pick the wrong one, like you do y of g of x. And then that's going to give you g prime. So, you would just have to go back and fix it, unless you're using the formula, which we'll introduce in a moment. So then I got to take the derivative. So I'll do this again. Okay, y of x, g of blank. And then y prime of x times g prime of y of x. Derivative of x is 1. So you'll get y prime of x equals 1 over g prime of y of x. Okay, now, guys, let's try to notice the pattern. So y and g are inverses. Okay, and the same pattern, if you go back here, would hold. Yeah, so actually, let's start here. So to get w prime, it's 1 over f prime of w. To get f prime, it's 1 over w prime of f. All right, so it's kind of like if this is the derivative, then the other side is 1 over the derivative of the other function with the original of this inside. Okay, so that's basically the pattern here. Same thing here. So oh yeah, and maybe I'm just thinking this. You could even like maybe memorize, or actually, I'll go like this. So if you just like memorize this, like y prime of x is 1 over g prime of blank, and then what goes back in here is, the original of that. Okay. So, yeah, so the formula is this. If f and g are inverse functions, then I'll use f prime, then f prime of x is always going to be equal to 1 over g prime of, and then the original f goes back in there. Okay, so you don't need to start with the composition. So when we start with the composition, that we're sort of like derive, I shouldn't use. If we're starting with the composition, we're like, you know, figuring out the formula. But in the future, if you want, you could just jump right to the formula. But the composition is why it works. The composition and chain rule. All right, so let's try this time just with the formula. So given that A is equal to B inverse, express B prime of X, okay? So you're just gonna write down B prime of X equals 1 over, okay, the inverse function of B is A, so A prime of, and then the regular B function goes back in. All right. Okay, so I'll see here we'll jump straight to the formula. I mean, if I were you, I would just memorize the formula. Okay, there it is.